I got through most of this wrap-up and then realized it stopped filming, probably in the beginning stages of the video. This always happens, and now I will commemorate my loss of the video with a gummy worm. I'm not couch wailing. Hey you guys, it's Teresa and welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to talk about my July wrap-up, and I already filmed most of this video, and then my camera decided to stop filming. And it's been a really long week. But let's just get into it before I start losing it. So the first book in this wrap-up list, one of the two, they both work, is Dark Places by Gillian Flynn. Now this follows Libby Day as she 25 years after she has essentially watched the slaughter of her family and put her brother, who has been assumed and found guilty of the murders, to jail for some satanic cult kind of murder. Now 25 years later, this Kill Club, who is interested in all these like really weird and kind of demented, like serial killing murders and like reenacting them and all that stuff, want her to kind of retestify and open up the case again and say that her brother was not guilty. Now she's kind of been dealing with this for her entire life, and she's also essentially struggled with a PTSD that was never really fully found help for. So, you know, she's gonna say no. But somehow she gets dragged into this entire world of trying to figure out whether or not her events actually lined up with the true events, as well as figuring out who the real killer is. She ends up in the same place she was 25 years ago, with the people who actually killed her family still on the loose. So, you know, thrillers and such. But I gave this a 5 out of 5 stars. All the plot twists just threw me for a loop and then some. Like, I felt like I was on a roller coaster of different plot twists, and they all wrapped up into one really nice bow, without it being a really nice bow. And I thought that it was great. Normally by towards the end of the mystery, I can figure out who did it and why they did it and all that stuff. But this one, I really couldn't pinpoint it, and I was a bubble of confusion the entire time. So 5 out of 5 stars, and would definitely recommend this. And I want to watch I think it was the HBO movie or TV show, but my friend said it wasn't very accurate to the book. And I know like the whole based off a book thing, but you know, there are some details I would like in a book adaptation, like an adaptation from a book to a movie or TV show. You know, it's just something, but we'll see. The next book in this wrap-up is one that took me forever to read, but I'm really glad I finally got to it, and that is Tales from the Shadowhunter Academy by Cassandra Clare, Sarah Reese Brennan, Maureen Johnson, and Robin Wasserman, and one day I will have all their names memorized so I no longer have to look at the cover and feel really, really bad. For those of you guys who don't know, this follows Simon Lewis as after the events of City of Heavenly Fire, as he goes on into the Shadowhunter Academy for 2 years to become a Shadowhunter. Now we see a lot of stories, mainly not just from Simon's point of view, but also from the varying points of view of different members that we have seen throughout the series. And it also bridges the gap between, well, Simon's gap between City of Heavenly Fire and Lady Midnight. Now, here are all of my individual ratings for this short stories, but I'm not going to get too much into them because, you know, a lot of things to go through. I definitely enjoyed it. I thought it was a wonderful way to kind of bridge that random gap that we had, or like some part of the random gaps that we had from City of Heavenly Fire and Lady Midnight, which is the next series for those who don't really know. And I enjoyed it. I thought some stories were better than others, but what can you really do about it is how it is. And I definitely kind of am kicking myself in the butt for not reading this sooner. But, you know, it's not going to change because I still have yet to pick up or buy online any of the Tales from the Shadowhunter Market series. So we're just going to go with it. The next book on this list is one that I'm very happy to finally get around to rereading. I read this when it was still online, and encompassed both the first book and the second book that is out, but I have yet to read the second book because the third book isn't out yet, so I can't binge. But that is Receiver of Many by Rachel Alexander. Now, for those of you guys who haven't heard of this, it essentially follows Hades and Persephone, or the myth of Hades and Persephone, as they go through life together after, you know, the whole like dragging her back down to the underworld and the pomegranate thing. And it just kind of essentially shows us Persephone growing into her own, while also falling in love with the Lord of the Underworld. Now, I gave this a 3.75 out of 5 stars. I still enjoyed the story and the premise. You know me and my Greek myths, I am a slut for them, and any kind of retelling you can give me. However, this is an adult fantasy novel, and there are a lot of sex scenes for those of you guys who may be a little more on the blushy side. But I felt sometimes sex scenes were a little unnecessary and they didn't really move the plot along very well. Not that sex scenes do need to move the plot along, but they didn't serve a greater purpose other than to be there as a sex scene. And on top of that, there was a lot of random head jumping that wasn't distinctive in, like, when it switches to a new point of view. And there were just some conciseness issues. Conciseness? I don't know. There's a word in there somewhere that I had issues with that I feel like could have been better done had she been able to go through and give this another round of edits. But overall, I enjoyed it, and we'll be picking up the second and third book when the third book comes out. The next novel in this wrap-up is one that kind of floated around in BookTube for a little bit, but kind of died off, and that is The Third Twin by C.J. Amololu. Now, for those of you who don't know, The Third Twin follows twins, Ava and Lexi, and throughout their entire childhood, they use this third twin, like an imaginary friend, Alicia, to kind of use them as a scapegoat. So if someone stole a cookie or changed the channel, Alicia did it, and it was cute and funny. And now that they're seniors in high school, they use it to kind of date boys they wouldn't date or wouldn't get approved of, or, you know, aren't really their type, and go to parties that they probably shouldn't be going to. And all is fun and great until one day it ends up that Alicia's date is found dead, and her fingerprints is on the body, but she doesn't exist. So lots of things going on here. Now I am stuck between a 2.75 to 3 out of 5 stars with this book. The premise was great. I liked the premise, but there were just some things in there that needed more fleshing out, and it didn't feel very thriller-y toward the end when everything got, like, solved. So yeah, but there are more of my thoughts in that in my tea talk for this book, so I'll leave it linked in the cards and down below if you guys are interested. The last book in this wrap-up is one that I'm also kicking myself in the butt about for not reading sooner, and that is The Night Circus by Erin Morgenstern. Now, this is a fantasy novel that follows two magicians, Celia Bowen and Marcus Alistair, who their entire life they have been raised to compete in this competition, this challenge that their parents / mentor person has set up for them. And whoever wins this challenge becomes the greatest magician ever. And it so happens that this challenge has been set in a circus. And the downside is they don't really know that they're competing against one another, nor do they know the rules, the guidelines, or how a winner is going to be determined. So lots of different plots going through this book. I gave it a 4 out of 5 stars. I thought it was beautifully written with heartbreaking characters and complex plots and characters as well. I dinged it because of my own struggles with the book, but I will talk more about that in my tea talk, which will also be linked above and below. But that is it for this wrap-up. I actually enjoyed most of the books with some varying degree that I've read this month. That's really exciting for me. So if you guys like these videos, hit like. I try to upload every Saturday and Wednesday. Comment if you guys want to have a chat about any of these books, especially about Tales of the Shadowhunter Academy and kind of my individual ratings for the short stories as a whole instead of like short stories individually instead of a whole. I love to talk about that. Subscribe so you guys don't miss out. And if you guys have any ideas for a tea talk that you want me to do or a character chat, or I'm trying to do this thing where I like vlog a book of the week, but I don't really know what book to pick out of the books that I chose for this month. So if you have any ideas for that, like a book you want me to read and vlog the entire week of, also leave that down below. But until then, I'll see you guys on Wednesday. Bye.